The time has come for me to make a beginner's guide to RuPaul's Drag Race. That's a Drag Race reference. You'll get it if you start watching. Welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. I typically cover TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel. So subscribe if that's your vibe. It's been so long since I made a video, I forgot how to distribute the breathing in my intro. It's really been a minute since I made a video. I missed y'all. You could say I've just been living that life, Von Dutch, cult classic, but I still pop. Has anyone else adopted Brat as their new personality? But yes, if you're new to the Miscellaneous channel, you might not know that I typically, in the past few years, I have slowed down my YouTube videos in the summer. It doesn't mean I've gone away, it doesn't mean I've died. It's kind of the slowest season on YouTube. Views are lower, I think people are out living their lives. And also the TV season kind of slows down. Summer I get to have a little break and recover from the several big videos I did in the spring and gear up for the fall season, which gets pretty crazy. So anyway, I thought it was about time I made a beginner's guide to RuPaul's Drag Race. This is a series I unintentionally started on my channel. I have done a beginner's guide to Survivor, a beginner's guide to America's Next Top Model, and more recently a beginner's guide to Vanderpump Rules. And you may or may not know this about me, but I am extremely obsessed with RuPaul's Drag Race. Anyone that knows me in real life or follows me on social media knows that about me. And since a lot of y'all follow me and watch my videos about dating reality TV shows, I thought maybe some of you don't know about the RuPaul's Drag Race world and are intrigued by it. Maybe you've seen RuPaul collecting Emmy Awards every year. Maybe you've seen a video of Trixie and Katya reacting to Netflix shows. Maybe you've used an reaction GIF and wondered who this beautiful woman is. Or maybe you don't know anything about RuPaul's Drag Race, but are looking for a low-effort way to get into the Pride spirit, which, by the way, happy Pride Month. So if you're curious about RuPaul's Drag Race and are not sure where to start, or have only caught an episode here and there, then this video is for you. And if you are a fan of RuPaul's Drag Race and are just here for the ride, you can also feel free to chime in the comments. I'm going to be giving my own opinions about where a new viewer should start in their Drag Race journey, but feel free, other Drag Race fans, to give your input, give your opinions on like best seasons to start, where you started, and let's get more people into this show. I personally love spreading reality TV shows like a virus. That's my favorite pastime, honestly, so I'm excited to hopefully encourage you to give RuPaul's Drag Race a try. So as your spirit guide on this journey, I want to first of all give you enough information to determine if you are interested in RuPaul's Drag Race as a TV show. I'm going to be giving you information about where to watch, how to watch, because with Drag Race it's actually a tiny bit more complicated than any other beginner's guide I have made. And then of course I want to give you a clear idea of where to start your journey and what path to take once you have started. In my opinion, this is just my recommendation, and once you get into it you can determine your own path. I also want to give y'all a picture of the full franchise. The show has matured a bit. It has a lot of seasons and a lot of spin-offs going on, so I'm going to try to untangle that for you and give you a clear picture of the whole Drag Race franchise. And this will all be without any spoilers about winners or placements of any contestants on the show. It is a competitive reality show, so it can be hard to go Googling this information without getting spoilers about who won or finalists or anything like that. Honestly, when I made my first beginner's guide a few years ago, I didn't think Drag Race was ready for a beginner's guide whole video because there weren't really that many seasons out, and ever since then, Drag Race has exploded. There has been a drag queen boom and I live for it, but I can see how now, looking at a franchise like Drag Race, that made it a little more confusing and nebulous. So let me start with the question, is it worth watching? And of course you already know what I'm gonna say. Obviously I think it's worth watching. It's one of my favorite shows of all time, but let me tell you why. So if you enjoy any kind of reality TV creative competition, Drag Race is absolutely worth checking out. The format of RuPaul's Drag Race is a little bit most similar to something like a Project Runway or an America's Next Top Model. It kind of started as a parody of these types of shows back in the day and has now evolved into being the biggest stage for drag excellence. It has really transcended that original sort of campy parody feel it started out as. If you're not aware at all, RuPaul's Drag Race is a reality TV show about drag queens competing to become America's next drag superstar and win a large cash prize. I'm confident in saying that Drag Race requires the most wide range of creative skills of any reality TV show in history, and by far. Every single season, these drag queens have to dance, lip sync, sing, act, do comedy, do improv. So, impersonate celebrities, market products, brand themselves, conduct interviews, write songs, host talk shows, on top of showing a fashionable and creative and on theme runway look every single episode, which includes their hair and their makeup and accessories. So you can tell why no other reality TV show comes close. No other creative industry comes close, honestly, to just the range you have to have. Like, most other shows, Top Model is just about modeling. Project Runway is just about fashion and making garments. Something like Glow Up or the tattoo shows, they're about those specific art forms. But drag involves it all. That makes it a very, very compelling creative competition, because every winner and honestly every contestant has to have this whole package that is beyond just one singular art form. And there are queens that are good at one thing and not the other, and that's what brings a lot of interesting conflict creatively throughout the whole season. It's just interesting to see how the different strengths and archetypes of drag queens navigate having to be a jack of all trades on the show. Because in real life, drag queens can kind of pick what kind of queen they want to be. But on RuPaul's Drag Race, you literally have to do it all. So I think if you're just a creative person or like seeing displays of creativity and art, I really, really recommend RuPaul's Drag Race. And then the other reason I recommend it, which is very obvious to me, I barely even thought of it at first, but the show does an excellent job of showing a lot of different social justice issues from the very beginning, honestly, from early seasons where people were disclosing their HIV positive status or coming out as trans. RuPaul's Drag Race has provided this platform for every kind of issue that is happening in recent history within the LGBTQ plus community is addressed in some form or another. At least it's at least touched on this show, and it can be a real nice way to learn about these issues while also getting it in this pretty package of like fun and lightheartedness, and it's really one of the biggest stages for queer art. That comes with its own problems, like let's not worry about that in the beginner's guide, because Drag Race is such a big platform that it can be a little bit sanitized or washed down, but like let's not go there yet. At face value, Drag Race showcases way more than any other reality TV show, really, aside from something like a Legendary or other just queer-centric shows. But in terms of diversity, RuPaul's Drag Race really has that, and you can really learn a lot from it. Let me give you some of my least favorite things about RuPaul's Drag Race, and I'm not trying to not convince you because I think it's very worthwhile to watch it, but I also don't want you to start watching it and be like, you said this was a perfect reality show and there was nothing wrong with it, because every reality show and show has its flaws. I think, honestly, my least favorite thing on Drag Race is like the acting challenges are sometimes like really poorly written and can be just hit or miss. So if you run into an episode that like the challenge, you're just like, what the hell is this and what is going on? That's normal. I don't know what the writers are doing on RuPaul's Drag Race sometimes, and the best parts of RuPaul's Drag Race are when the drag queens get to improv and just be themselves, be their real personas, because that's the funniest and that's what they're good at. And sometimes like the main challenges can be very like written poorly or just like a bad concept that makes no sense. And just know that us diehard fans are with you if you get confused or like, this challenge was stupid or boring or I didn't understand anything. Like that's can be normal for Drag Race. And then one other thing I do have to warn you about this show is that there is quite a bit of producing going on. There's quite a bit of rigomoris, as one queen put it one season. The show is called RuPaul's Drag Race, and at the end of the day, it's RuPaul's decision, and some of the time it makes no sense, and someone goes home that doesn't deserve it, or judges episode to episode will change their tune. It's kind of like they play favorites. As you're going through a season, keep that in mind. If a favorite goes home or you totally don't see eye to eye with the judges, that is also very normal, and the diehard fans, trust me, are with you on that. I just had to say that because I have a friend who recently got into Drag Race and he was really frustrated by the judging because he watches these shows like The Challenge or Survivor or Big Brother, where it's a lot more democratic. If you're a fan of that kind of reality TV, the cutthroat competition, you might be frustrated by the judging on Drag Race. I still think overall the show is worthwhile because just the artistry you get to witness and the representation and just the cast, it's still worth it, but I didn't want to not warn y'all about some of the weaknesses that Drag Race does have. Now let's get technical and talk about the format of the show and where to find it and all that. It's a little complicated, so we need to have a whole section for it. So today, in the summer of 2024, RuPaul's Drag Race has aired 16 seasons. The format of each episode is there's usually a mini challenge and then a maxi challenge or main challenge, and then there's a runway. Then there's judging critiques, and then there's a lip sync for your life between the bottom two queens of the week, and whoever wins gets to stay, and whoever loses the lip sync goes home. And they do that up until the end, where they have a finale with like the top 3 to 5 queens, and from there RuPaul decides a winner. Where to watch is the complicated part of RuPaul's Drag Race. Historically, RuPaul's Drag Race has always been on cable, and this is for the US audience. Drag Race has aired on Logo TV, and then it switched to VH1, and currently it is airing on MTV. So these are all channels that require a cable subscription. That is the difficult thing about RuPaul's Drag Race, and I think why a lot of people haven't gotten into it, or it's like a barrier for them, and I totally get it because it's a pain in the ass. And right now I have cable kind of included through where I live, and that's been a blessing because I've been able to watch Drag Race, but before that I always had to like get cable just for Drag Race to watch it live. And the most annoying thing is that if you don't have cable, it doesn't go on streaming the next day anywhere. So if you're in the US and you miss the live broadcast, you can't really catch up the next day, aside from like within your cable app, you know, they have like on-demand stuff and you can watch it still with the same commercials and everything. If you live in a big city, you could go to watch parties at gay bars. A lot of the time they'll air the episode and that's really fun. But yeah, if you're in the US, cable is the way to go. And you could do like YouTube TV or Hulu with live TV or like Sling or those kinds of cable options. You can also buy the full season on Amazon Prime, I believe, and through that you can watch the episode the next day. after it airs. So some people do that instead of paying for the cable for a few months. So that's how you watch new seasons of Drag Race. However, to watch old seasons, the good news is it is on streaming. Old seasons of Drag Race are on Paramount Plus. They have all the seasons through season 15. The new season takes a while to get to Paramount Plus, but they're there and they're all there. So if you're looking to start, it's a great investment to get Paramount Plus, and you can get access to all the seasons, including All Stars is also on Paramount Plus. And Paramount Plus also has some Untucked, which is the after show to regular Drag Race, and we'll get more into that. So in order to watch other spin-offs of Drag Race, so like international franchises, for example, you can watch that on WoW Presents Plus. WoW Presents Plus is the company that makes Drag Race. They're called World of Wonder, and they have their own streaming app, basically. And WoW Presents Plus is pretty cheap. You probably don't have to worry about that, because if you're just getting into Drag Race, you should focus on the regular seasons. But if you are not in the US, you can find the regular RuPaul's Drag Race American seasons on WoW Presents Plus. The best rule of thumb is basically on WoW Presents Plus, you can watch every other country's Drag Race except your own country. So if you're in the US like me, on WoW Presents Plus, I can watch Canada's Drag Race, UK Drag Race, all that. But I can't watch American Drag Race. But if you're in the UK, on WoW Presents Plus, you can watch American Drag Race and every other country's Drag Race, but not your own UK Drag Race. It's kind of weird. I don't know what Paramount Plus covers outside of the United States, so I don't know if that's also an option, but I'm pretty sure WoW Presents Plus outside the US has all the American Drag Race seasons if you're looking to start. So let me walk you through a little bit of the spin-offs of RuPaul's Drag Race, because they're kind of important in the Drag Race franchise picture. You have your regular RuPaul's Drag Race that started it all. It's American drag queens competing for the title of America's Next Drag Superstar. And then there's an after show called Untucked. And Untucked is interesting because it kind of gives you an extra glimpse into the episode you just watched. I believe every season after season 1 has an Untucked that goes along with it. And Untucked usually airs right after a regular episode. It covers this time where the queens are backstage while the judges deliberate about who's going to be in the bottom and who's going to lip sync that day. So Untucked is this like waiting period that the queens are wondering if they're going to be in the bottom, they're going to win the week, they're going to hash out drama or have feelings about what they were just critiqued about. So it's this very interesting backstage period of the episode. And a lot of the most iconic moments have happened in Untucked. In earlier seasons, they gave them quite a bit of alcohol during the Untucked, and so there were a lot of fights going on. And it makes sense. Emotions are very heightened because the queens just got critiqued by the judges and they're nervous about what placement they're going to be in that week, or they're mad at each other for something that went on. If there was like a group challenge, a team thing, they'll hash it out with each other. So there are a lot of iconic fights in Untucked. The tagline of Untucked is literally like, if you're not watching Untucked, you're only getting half the story. And that can be true, especially in the early season. So I definitely recommend trying to watch Untucked if you start a season, especially like season 9. The annoying thing about Untucked is that one varies season by season where you can get it. Google might be your best friend here, but some Untucked seasons are on Paramount Plus, especially newer eras. They've kind of solidified the Untucked format. Certain seasons, like season 8, the Untucked is on YouTube. So there's a couple seasons where the Untucked is on YouTube. Some are a little harder to find. Yeah, that's Untucked, and I was kind of like, I almost forgot about it as a spin-off because to me it's so like almost married to a regular season's episode, you know? But yeah, I think it's important to mention Untucked and what that is. So the next most long-running spin-off is called RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars, and that is where the American drag queens from regular seasons will come back to compete again. It's very much what it sounds like. It's a similar-ish format to regular Drag Race, though they get more playful with the elimination methods. They try to incorporate a little bit more of like social game aspects where queens will have a hand in eliminating their fellow contestants. So All Stars is interesting because they do change the format quite a lot. They'll use one format for a couple seasons and then change it and add a thing, and to me it's kind of gotten a little wild where it is now. It has 9 seasons already. As I'm filming this, season 9 is still airing. The formatting of All Stars is not my favorite, but it had a really strong run in the early years of it, and we'll get more into that. But don't worry too much about All Stars if you haven't started any seasons. We will be starting with regular seasons first. So the next spin-off is way newer, and it's called Blank versus the World. So there's been like UK versus the world and Canada versus the world. The country changes, but it's like this versus the world style. And this format is kind of a abridged all-star season where they bring in queens from different international franchises together to compete against each other that have already been on their country's drag race. And usually the host country gets like a few more queens. So like UK versus the world has like half UK queens and half queens from other countries. I personally haven't watched that too much, but it's interesting to know that it's out there, or in case you open WOW Presents Plus and you're like, what is this? That's what that is. But I don't recommend worrying about this franchise at all. It's definitely more for the advanced guide to RuPaul's Drag Race. And then finally, the last spin-off I want to talk about is all of the international Drag Race franchises. There are 2 international franchises that RuPaul hosts. So RuPaul hosts UK Drag Race and Drag Race Down Under, which includes Australia and New Zealand. Very recently, RuPaul has decided to step away from the Down Under franchise, and Michelle, who's like RuPaul's right-hand woman, is taking the place of head judge for the Australian seasons. And then all the other countries have their own head judges, who a lot of the time are RuPaul's Drag Race alums from America. If you live outside the US, your country might have a drag race and you might have heard of it. I've enjoyed a lot of these international seasons. I really enjoyed certain seasons of Spain. I enjoyed Thailand. Thailand was the first international drag race franchise, and I enjoyed that. I've enjoyed some Canada's Drag Race, some UK Drag Race, but I wouldn't worry about it just yet if you're just starting on your RuPaul's Drag Race journey. Like, the American Drag Race is the original, so that is the place to start. Unless your country, your home country, has its own drag race, then I would recommend checking that out. It might be a more familiar introduction to the world of Drag Race compared to starting with American Drag Race, you know? So finally, let's get to the fun part, recommendations. If you don't retain a lot of that information, that is okay. Hopefully you retain the important stuff, but this is the part where we actually talk about, like, where do we start, what eras Drag Race has gone through, and what eras I recommend. So let me start with an overview of the eras of Drag Race. Starting with seasons 1 through 3, I believe, are the infant era of Drag Race. These seasons are a little less polished. They're scrappy. They're as scrappy as Drag Race gets. They have more of a America's Next Top Model vibe to them. They're more edgy and irreverent. Like, some of the things wouldn't really fly today from those seasons. Drag Race is very much finding its footing here. I do think by season 3 they have it figured out, and season 3 is one of my favorite seasons of all time, but it might not be the best place to start as your very first season. So next after this era is seasons 4 through 6, which I believe are the golden era. This by far is the best era to start in, and I think in this franchise, most fans would agree. One of those 3 seasons is probably most fans' favorite season of all time. It just strikes that perfect balance of scrappy and polished, of drama and artistry, and it just has this like these excellent casts that are super memorable. There's a lot of iconic moments, and I think this is a great place to start too, because they have a lot of the lore that is the foundation of Drag Race today. There are some great seasons more recently that you could start with, but they're going to be making all these references to mostly these 3 seasons, season 4, 5, and 6. If you were to ask me, just plain and simple as a friend, what season to start with, I would tell you season 6 all the way. That is my favorite season, and I just think it has it all. I think a lot of fans would feel the same way about season 5. It's a close second for me, but for some, season 5 is better. Season 5 also is so iconic. Out of the 3, my least favorite is season 4. I actually like them in reverse order, the best, like season 6, 5, and 4. 4 is not my favorite, but I definitely think it fits in this golden era because it's referenced a lot. A lot of fans cite it as a favorite season, and it does have a quite iconic cast. I just think 5 and 6 are just like chef's kiss, the biggest slays. I just recommend starting in any of those. I would say season 6, but just pick out of 4, 5, and 6 one to start with. And then after these seasons, you have what I'm deeming the post-golden era, and that is season 7 and season 8. These seasons are kind of outliers in the logo era. So seasons 1 through 8 make up the greater logo era. I feel like I'm a fucking paleontologist or something talking about the logoolithic era right here. Seasons 1 through 8 are the logo TV era, and all in all, these are the early seasons of Drag Race and make up the foundation for what we have now. Before Drag Race became more mainstream, it was just a little scrappier, a little less polished. At the end of this logo era, you have a little bit of this transitional period where Drag Race was really on the edge of mainstream and crossing over to VH1, which we'll get to. But season 7 and 8 are a little bit of outliers for me. I very much recommend them, and I think they're very great seasons as a hardcore fan, but they just have their own weird issues. So season 7's issue is that it has an amazing cast. It has honestly birthed some of the most successful drag queens. Trixie and Katya come out of season 7, if that tells you anything. And then season 8 has Bob the Drag Queen on it, who is also a very successful drag queen and was just on tour with Madonna, if you went to that show or seen clips. The cast in season 7 and 8 are everything. They're pretty much comparable for me to the golden era. It's not that different. Season 7's problem is that they cast a lot of fashionable, like, look queens is what we call them, and then throughout the season gave them an insane amount of acting challenges and comedy challenges. So it was just kind of mismatched and poorly produced. It's totally the producer's fault because they cast all these gorgeous, like, really fashion forward girls and then gave them all this comedy and acting to do that is not their forte. Season 7 is kind of like really funny in hindsight because all these fashion queens are trying to be funny, and it's kind of like funny in a cringy way, but at the time it was like, really, this is a follow-up to season 6, the best season of all time. For season 8, they have a totally different problem. Their challenges and cast match up just fine, but season 8 is a weird one because it's the shortest season of any Drag Race, and it's kind of missing a lot of the most iconic challenges that are staples of Drag Race. It's missing like a writing a verse for a song challenge, it's missing a stand-up comedy challenge, and it's just kind of missing a few staples that I feel like weaken the season overall, and it's just like there's the fewest amount of episodes. So it's just too short. It's nothing, no fault of the season. It's honestly a great season, great cast. You could start there and have a great time, but I would recommend starting more with a traditional season that has all the staples and then going to season 8 when you feel like you got a lay of the land. So after the logo era, we go into the VH1 era, which is kind of long. It's seasons 9 through 14. And you can kind of divide this era into like pre-COVID versus post-COVID. I like the VH1 era better pre-COVID than post. The VH1 era, I don't recommend starting with. It is where I started, actually. I started in season 9. And I think season 9 is a good season. I just think the VH1 era was Drag Race kind of figuring itself out in the mainstream context. In its infancy era, it was figuring itself out just as a TV show, but it feels like in the VH1 era, it's figuring itself out as just like a mainstream TV show, which is a little different. And these seasons also kind of coincide with like the Trump presidency, so there's a lot more of like a friendliness to the queens or a niceness, and there's a lot less drama. These seasons also happened when drag queens were getting a way bigger platform, being on VH1, and therefore a lot more social media hate and fan backlash and all the fun stuff that comes when you're in the public eye. Throughout these seasons, I feel like they get worse. Like season 9 and 10, I think are pretty solid and they're okay. I don't recommend starting there. But then season 11 onward, it just feels like everyone's afraid of what the fans are going to think and being reactionary and not trying to get any hate instead of being like raw and authentic, which is what made the logo era so special. The good thing about the VH1 era is that it does have an elevated production value. I feel like Drag Race really figured itself out technically of like how it looks in that sense. Also, it has really big celebrity guests since it is more mainstream. I started watching season 9, if you haven't guessed already, or if you don't know. Lady Gaga is the guest judge on the very first episode of season 9. And so, as usual with everything, my queen, Lady Gaga, guided me through a new love for me, and that was RuPaul's Drag Race. And so, every opening episode of the VH1 era, there's like a big celebrity guest judge. They had like Nicki Minaj, and they had Christina Aguilera and Miley Cyrus. So just kind of the biggest name they can get. And they have continued that tradition up until present day. And yeah, there's just like, in general, there's guest judges that pop in these seasons that are a little higher profile than the ones before. And I feel like after season 10, they also started adding like weird production twists that didn't quite land ever for me and for the audience, because they would never keep any of it. It would be kind of just like little gimmicks for the seasons. One season had like a chocolate bar with a golden ticket, literally Charlie and the Chocolate Factory style, so that one queen didn't have to go home. And all of these twists were basically ways to bring back a contestant like mid-season or like towards the end of the season, and give like someone a second chance, which sounds cool in theory, but in practice it was just kind of a way to drag out the season, no pun intended. It became really frustrating watching it live. I remember watching these seasons and being like, it's never gonna end. They just keep not eliminating people. They keep bringing people back. It just felt like we would take one step forward, 3 steps back somehow with the casting on these. Or like one of these seasons, they had like a 5-person finale. And it was just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, just, you gotta eliminate people at some point. So I think the VH1 era is weak, especially towards the end. And I don't recommend starting there at all. The artistry is there, of course, but there's just a little less soul to it, and people are really aware of the cameras, really aware of the public and the audience, to where it becomes less enjoyable than perhaps other seasons. If you get into Drag Race, you can always get to these seasons, but I just don't recommend starting here. And then finally we get to the MTV era, which is the current era we're in. It's still early on. There's only been 2 seasons, season 15 and season 16, that have aired under this new MTV move. But they've actually been really strong, and there's a clear difference in quality from the VH1 seasons. Visually, it looks the same. But the MTV seasons really feel like a back to basics kind of attitude for Drag Race. And they're not adding these dumb little twists to bring back contestants. They seem to have figured out a new format. Hopefully season 16 had like a really solid like full season arc format where they did the regular competition, but then the eliminated girls got to come back to compete in just like a lip sync off that did not put them back in the regular competition. It was just like an extra little prize. It was still a good way to give eliminated queens like a second chance at something without messing with like the game itself where they already got eliminated once, you know. So it's too early to call, but so far it's been solid, and production seems to be more focused on casting and casting really good queens. I think it also reflects kind of overall attitudes like as a society post-COVID that we had, where we're craving more raw authenticity, and I just feel like the cast in seasons 15 and 16 have been excellent at being real and having drama and just being interesting and compelling. I commend them for that because I was kind of losing hope in that VH1 era. Honestly, if you're not starting in the golden era old seasons of Drag Race, I would recommend starting with a season 15 or a season 16. Honestly, this past season, a lot of my friends started watching season 16 without having any prior Drag Race, so I'm very happy for that, and I think they had a good time because it was a great season in the end. The only thing is I don't fully recommend starting in modern times just because there are so many references to old Drag Race episodes, so I don't necessarily recommend it, but you will have a good time if you start with season 15 or season 16, and you'll get a really good idea of like where Drag Race is currently at and just like how modern Drag Race feels. So let's review the paths you can take if you are starting your RuPaul's Drag Race journey. Path number 1 you could take is start from the beginning. Start from Drag Race season 1 and make your way, you know, in order. Some people are completionists or purists in that way. I'm not. I'm a very skip around kind of person, and that's why I make these videos, because when I'm starting to get into something, I'm like, okay, what is the best thing or the best thing to start with to get me hooked? And then I'll go back if I like it enough to the very beginning and watch it all. I will say for Drag Race season 1 in particular has very tragic production value, and I don't fully recommend, or like, I just want to say if you do start with season 1, that's not what Drag Race is gonna look like moving forward. It's mostly just that season. It's kind of like a weird blurry filter on it. It's like Vaseline on the camera lens. So the path I suggest the most, as I already talked about, is starting in that golden era. I suggest start with season 6 or 5. Honestly, those two are pretty comparable, and whichever one you watch first, the second season you should watch is the other one. So if you watch season 6 first, afterwards you should watch season 5 if you're into it. Or vice versa, and season 4 as well. Once you're done with 4, 5, and 6, or at least 5 and 6, I would recommend season 7 and 8. I recommend season 8 way more than 7, but 7 has a lot of really famous queens, so like I think it is worth watching. You could also jump back to season 3 if you're craving more of that old or scrappier feel of Drag Race. Season 3 is really strong, and the drama's fire. So if you're craving more old, go to season 3. If you go through some of this golden era, post-golden era, and are wanting to see what modern Drag Race feels like, where we are today, I'd recommend jumping to 15 or 16, or you could try 9 or 10. But between 10 and 15, I don't recommend. This is very important. If you watch the golden era episodes, 4, 5, and 6, and 7. There is an early All-Star season that is considered the best season of Drag Race of all time, pretty unanimously, universally across the fandom. In the early days, All-Stars would happen every few seasons. Now, All-Stars happens every year. So, All-Stars 1, let me just tell you right now, avoid at all costs. Season 1 of All-Stars was garbage. They couldn't figure out the format. They did a weird teams thing that just didn't work. Then Drag Race came back in All-Star Season 2 and slayed the house down boots with that season. If you have finished Season 5, 6, and 7, do yourself a favor and watch RuPaul's Drag Race All-Star Season 2. I don't think a lot of All-Stars are worth it. Seasons 3 and 4 of All-Stars are pretty fun and have some great famous queens on them. So yeah, once you've watched a few of these Golden Era seasons, once you've watched All-Stars 2, it's pretty much free reign. Think about what you would like or wouldn't like. I definitely recommend checking out 15 and 16. Those were really great. MTV era is slaying so far. Once you've watched a good amount of seasons, you can go fill in the gaps, go back to the very beginning, or try some international seasons. UK season 2 was one of my favorites. I made a whole video about it way back when it was airing. If you want a more alternate path, I would suggest starting with season 15 or 16 and then jumping back to that golden era. But the path is still the same. It's just start with 15 or 16, then go back to golden era and then post golden era, and then All-Stars 2. I will say All-Star Season 7 is an outlier in like great All-Star seasons. I very much recommend it. It is fantastic, but it is an all-winner season, so try not to look at the cast of All-Star Season 7 or you'll be spoiled on a lot of different winners across regular Drag Race and All-Stars. All-Star Season 7 is a great one to like end with, or towards the end of your Drag Race journey, where you have all the winners. But you must have watched regular Drag Race up until season 12 and All-Stars up until All-Stars 6 and UK season 1. Because that was included. So that's the Drag Race. Oh my god, it's quite a lot. It's one of my favorite shows, so I did go a little hard, but it's a big franchise and it's a little more complex than all the other ones I've done, because all the other ones I've done I feel like have one trajectory instead of like all these little branching spin-offs. Sorry that was a long video, but it had to be done, and I hope you took away something from it or know where to start, feel less overwhelmed. If you have questions, feel free to let me know in the comments below. I love Drag Race, and it's weird I don't talk about it on my channel very much. I think it's just because there's an oversaturation of Drag Race commentary by a lot of drag queens, honestly, who have a lot of expertise and knowledge. By the way, Drag Race airs usually at the beginning of the year through like April or May, so it comes in early in that spring TV season every year. It usually starts like the first week of January, and it airs Friday nights. And then All Stars usually airs in the summer, and it's straight to streaming only, actually, to Paramount Plus. I should have mentioned all that, but yeah, there was a lot in this video. I'm sorry. Drop a bow in the chat if you made it this far. Let me know if you do start your journey, or if you plan to and where you plan to start. Who your favorite drag queens are, if you have any. For me, it's really hard to choose, but my favorite have to be Bob and Monet Exchange. I listen to their podcast. I have a poster of them back there. I think it's out of frame. So yeah, with season 16 wrapping, I thought it was a good time to jump in and help y'all. I've just been having fun this summer. I mean, living my life, like I said, and videos might be sporadic. I'm just kind of all over the place and doing life stuff, doing fun stuff, consuming, reading. I went to LA recently and did a whole like Vanderpump tour. I went to the Sur Alley and I saw Lisa Vanderpump. That was fun, and I actually have vlog footage of my trip to LA. I might start a vlog channel, I might not. I don't know, I'm debating it. So comment below any of your thoughts or questions. I will catch you in the next one. Wait, no. Fuck, what's my outro? I'm literally just stalling because I forgot my outro. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos whenever I feel like it about TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous on Instagram or Twitter to find out about new videos. Or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!